I'm on, yes? All right. Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be back here. Last time I was here, it was February, and we were talking about love. And it's lovely to hear more about love today and to explore freedom with you today. And boy, was that an interesting 5 months since I've last seen you, thinking about talking about freedom in July. Because it's such a broad topic. We heard it today a bit, right? Sometimes we use the word love. And we're also bombarded by it too. It is sometimes politicized, it is commercialized, it is proselytized. This idea that freedom, in its great expansiveness, can mean so many different things, so many wonderful things. So today I'm tasked with just taking a slice of it. Let's explore a perspective of it together. And I have two stories to share with you. One's a bit right brain, one's a bit left brain. And the first story, and some of you, may experience this daily. If you drive a BMW, for instance, the story is a team of engineers in BMW were invited one day by their head designer. Chris Bangle is his name. And he asked them, let's just take a sabbatical from doing our work for a minute. And let's explore something together. I don't want it to do anything with work. We're not doing any engineering work for the next 2 months. Let's explore something together and just use our creative mind. Let's just take a pause. Let us be in this moment of freedom from what's expected of us and what we normally do. And so he called the first meeting, and of course, as many of us may be apt to do when we're called into a meeting and we're not terribly sure what's going on, one of the engineers asked, "What are we doing here? Why are we here?" And Chris said, "You know what? That's a great question to ask. Let's explore that for the next 2 months. Why are we here?" And this is the sort of question you see, I babysat all my nieces and nephews. They ask that question when they're very young. But it seems to be a question that never really escapes us, does it? We're always asking, what is my purpose here? Why am I here? And so this example and this question that Chris started at BMW is kind of our question in our journey for today. And I want to talk about three things: the process that he went through, a bit of his findings, and what it means for us in our lives. So the first thing about the process is that he said, well, let's not get to answering that question just yet. How are we going to do this? And so they mulled this over for a solid month, half of the time that they were together. They said, well, the first thing we need to do is take a major step back. This is about perspective. Let's take a global look. This is a bit of what we do here together as a community, isn't it? Always taking a step back, seeing the big picture, the unity, the oneness of things. So as a team of engineers, they're like, let's look at the whole problem together. The second thing they decided is, what do we know is true? A question we always ask ourselves, or maybe sometimes forget to ask ourselves. In this secular exercise, they asked this deeply theological question: what is true for us? And then let's explore in the darkness. And this is humanity's journey, isn't it? It is the journey of freedom itself. We're always seeking and yearning and reaching perhaps into the darkness, the unknown, something that is beyond us, beyond our understanding. So let's talk a little bit about what they found so that we don't leave that story just hanging there. The first thing they found is, okay, we need to look at the entire universe, and we know this thing and see this thing in the universe, that it is always in balance. Nothing is running or accelerating within our sights. We see a balanced system here. What are the truths around that? Well, we know a couple things. We know that we're here. That counts for something. We know that all systems in being alive and doing their thing and being of purpose are doing something as well. They're adding more chaos into the universe. Chaos can be judged good or bad, but those brand new air conditioners that we have up there, right? They take power from the power outlet and they push out cold air. But the cold air is always slightly less than the amount of power that they draw. That's the law of entropy. And that law in itself, they said, that's interesting. That means that we're in a bit of a deficit. What would make up for that deficit? And they settled. And they kept pondering, and they kept pondering, and they kept questioning and debating. But they did finally settle. You know what? That's why we're here. We're the great counterbalance. We're the ones that are always pushing, expanding, the ones that are contributing, creating, recreating, and giving birth to new ideas, new things. We are that counterbalance. We are the things that are adding the plus to the entire equation of this universe. They got very philosophical. And the conclusion of that was not let's find the right answer, that whole exercise, but it was a deep sense of serenity and peace that the team felt, and a new sense of creativeness that they then took to their endeavors. And I'm sharing this with us today because this is our process too. This is our process. It is a three-part process, right? First of all, looking at the entire big picture, that we are all one. All is one thing. And that we are part of that one thing. And that this thing is always creating, always in balance, always rebirthing us and rebirthing all things around it. The second thing is we are constantly looking at what is true, aren't we? And to distill that to the very simple essence, that it's all energy. That's what the engineering team discovered, and that's what I think many of us know deep, deep in our hearts, that it's all energy, and that we get to be the plus in that equation. There's a second story I want to share with you, and it'll touch on the third major point. This one you may have heard. It's about the donkey and the farmer and the well. There's a farmer who has a very old donkey and a very dry well. And the donkey one day is just walking about, as many of us may be apt to do, just doing its thing, maybe lost in its own thoughts, and falls down the well. The farmer hears this wailing, right? He's out in the yard, or the farm, excuse me. Get a New Yorker talking about a farm, and it gets very interesting. And he hears this wailing, this piteous wailing. This thing is just, it can't get out. And so he, in complete loss, doesn't know what to do. Reaches out to a couple of his neighbors, calls them over. He says, I don't know what to do. Doesn't really ask what they think should be done, but decides, you know what, the well is old. It's not gonna serve me anymore, it's dry. The donkey is old, and I need to think about what are we gonna do with this thing trapped down there? So I think I'm just going to shovel dirt into the well and just call it a day. Put it out of its misery, make sure nobody else ever falls in there again. I don't want to repeat that mistake. What am I going to do? That's what I'm going to do. The neighbors all silently acquiesce to helping, some of them knowing perhaps that there's a deeper story going on, a deeper outcome, or an outcome that will benefit all. So they're putting the dirt in, shoveling it in, and the wailing gets even worse. The donkey just goes nuts in there, and then all of a sudden, the farmer notices that it's all quiet. He looks down. He sees that with each shovel of dirt on the donkey's back, the donkey is shaking it off and stepping with its feet and compacting the dirt underneath itself and raising itself slowly. Slowly and slowly and slowly. Some of the neighbors begin to smile in knowing, but they were there of service. The farmer is relieved, of course, and the donkey at some point frees itself. And I'm sure it frees itself with a knowing glance back at the farmer, like, hey, buddy, thanks for that. And so that story is a bit of a counterpoint to the Chris Bangle story in terms of the same process, right? Sure, the donkey didn't know about the unity of all things, or that there might be a deeper or bigger story than what was going on other than seeing the dirt get thrown onto its back. The neighbors may have as well, but didn't say anything. They were there to be of deep service. And they held the space of that knowing. So for us, we ask ourselves, if we were to explore freedom and see freedom really as a journey, as that slow ascent up the well, out of the darkness, as being the plus in that great equation of the universe, as the contributor, the creator itself. How do we act in adversity? Just like that, do we wail like that donkey? Or are we just putting our feet down and doing the deep work? Are we always in that lifting mode? Even in our heartbreak, and even when freedom itself pushes us past our shell of understanding, our current comfort zone, are we still holding a space for that freedom within us, that journey? Are we still walking the walk and talking the talk? Second piece in that story, I think, too, is a bit about community and interdependence. We talk a lot about freedom as if it is a solitary exercise, that it's about independence. I'm free. Very self-centered sort of look at things. But this story is really about that community, that web of wisdom that we know is always there supporting us. Sometimes seen, unseen, sometimes silent, sometimes wailing. But all of it is there propelling us as well, upward and forward. The third thing, like I said about the donkey, are we getting to work? Are we stuck in our story, perhaps, still wailing in the darkness? Or do we take a moment to really say to ourselves, can I shake this off? Will I shake this off? I will shake this off. And then do we give thanks? And this is perhaps the hardest, right? The cherry on top of this Freedom Sunday is perhaps the piece that we always forget. How do we give thanks and honor that work that we've done? That slow ascent, perhaps forgotten, perhaps unseen. And how do we commit to being always thankful and being joyful? So, how do we tie these two wild stories together? The Bengal side and the donkey. Well, it really is a story about connecting to the big picture, isn't it? That freedom itself is a journey to through and to our greatness. That greatness is at every single step. That even in the wailing in the darkness, we have that within us, everything that we need to get us through. That even in our liberation as we cross the threshold of getting out of the well, even in our discovery of something so simple like the Bengal team saying to themselves, oh, we were the answer. It was us all along. That simple truth, how does that further expand our freedom? Today I'm reminded about a reading, and thank you for sharing it with me. You know, this is all about I am the way, I am the truth and the life. That donkey probably didn't know that, but that's certainly what it was expressing and living through. That in that story, and even in the story of our lives, how we contribute to this beautiful world, that we play all the actors in that donkey story. Right? We're the donkey, we're sometimes asleep, we sometimes fall into the ruts of what we think we know, what we've always done. And yet we also have this beautiful capacity to shake it off and do the hard work. Honor the ass within you. Excuse my language. It's true. You know, a sense of humility and just acknowledging that we're holding these two wonderfully disparate pieces, and even more than two. We're this wonderful mixed bag. Right? The fireworks, if they were all one color, would be quite bland, wouldn't they? We're also the well in that story. That we are this fountain of life, just like the Bengal equation, right? That we are the thing that at once gave water and sustenance, but also acted as the ground by which this creature could elevate itself, that we could grow, that we could be reshaped, reborn, freed. We're also the farmer. We do our best, don't we? Sometimes we don't know, and sometimes we're just overly practical. And sometimes in exploring freedom, we should be wondrous about practicality, wisdom, the way things are always done. It's only practical or known because someone else tried it for the first time, and now we know about it. We're also the neighbors with that quiet knowing, that deep reserve of just giving and service. And I just want to remind us too that we're also the shovel. We are the instruments of good, God's instruments in this world to give, to just be of service as well. And we are the earth. That we are made, just like Chris Bangle's whole conversation about the universe, of stardust too, just like the earth itself. That we are the light of the world, just like the stars themselves. That we get to support and create and be reborn and give life and rebirth to others. That we are always rising towards our freedom. And so it is.